Now we get into the core of what we're talking about. When God made his promise to Abraham, there was no one greater for him to swear by. So he swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. And so after waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. People swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument. Okay? So some of you guys might find this passage to be a little tedious, but I want you to focus just briefly on this portion right here. People swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument. The author of Hebrews is saying that God made an oath with Abraham. And have you ever heard, we don't swear on people less than us, right? We swear on those greater than us. Mom, right? We come up with people that we're like, oh, I swear to God, right? We swear up, not down, right? We take an oath by greater than us, not lesser than us, okay? And so God, having no one greater, said, I swear by me. Right? That's what he did. That's what the author is saying. That's maybe more of the contemporary thinker, but the reality is that's what he did. So it puts an end and confirms anything that might be going on for the concerned party. That when God makes an oath, he doesn't make it lightly. He makes it, and it is in concrete, and it is there to stay. So after that it says, because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose clear. So now we're going to get into this part. The unchanging nature of the purpose of God is the reason he makes promises. Now, here we see that the author is using the life of Abraham as an example of why God makes oaths. So in this case, God, because his nature is unchanging, it never changes. His purposes remain true no matter what. His goals remain true no matter what. But now we get into an interesting part of the promises of God. The author uses Abraham. It says that Abraham waited patiently. How many of you have read the story of Abraham? Hopefully. You guys are like, yeah, they're here. Right? It's interesting that the author says that he waited patiently. Does anybody know how long roughly it was between the promise that was made to Abraham and the delivery of his son? 20 to 25 years, depending on how you view it. That's a long time to wait. We know that Abraham didn't wait well, as God would have hoped he would. But Abraham did wait for the promise, and the promise was what? Your descendants will be many. The promise was, I will make you the father of many nations. Right? I will make you the father of many nations. I will begin in you a great offspring. Right? Believe and hold true to the unchanging nature of the purpose and not the specifics of the promise. And what do I mean by that? If you are sitting there one day, God says to you, I'm going to make you the father of many. Your descendants will be millions. How many of us at that point then assume we're going to have a son? Just one. Most of us at this point are assuming what? More than one. Let's start with two. Right? Most of us are thinking grand scale. Right? We're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to get a better job to to support a mouse in my house. Right? And then God goes, now that you're 100-ish, here's your son. Right? But see, that's what we have to be aware of, is that the author of Hebrews is saying that God remains true to his purpose. The nature of who he is and his purpose is always true. The specifics of the promise are not for us to quantify or to explain. But we do that, right? We have this assumption. God goes, I'm going to do a great work for you. You're thinking, all right, 1 million thunders. Because God told me a great work. But a great work could be a single life, right? Abraham's many descendants were a single life. Oh, you get what I'm saying. Right? Because how many kids did his kid have? Okay, turn your Bibles to the Genesis. In the beginning. Yeah. Who's ready for some meat? All right. This idea, right? So it's not like Abraham got to be super granddad. You go, well, there's 4,700. Great. No! Right? So this idea that we often apply the specifics to the promise and then try to hold God to it. No, God is true to his purpose and therefore takes an oath about his purpose. I will follow through on my purpose. Don't worry about the specifics of my promise. My purpose is to take Abraham and make a great nation and to be the father of many descendants. So here's your son. That's it. Trust me with the rest. And so we run into this, in our own lives, this idea. It's dangerous to apply specifics when God merely applies purpose. If you are called to a location, if you are called to a specific place, if you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that God has reached down into your life and said, your job is to go here and be a light to this community, be careful what you decide that means. But often we try to hold God, we're like, you promised. God's going, that's not what I promised. You applied specifics to the promise. The promise was so that you knew I would hold true to the nature of my purpose, which is to bring light to that community that you so happen to be in that moment, not to make you happy to know that you nailed the specifics. So God did this so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of the hope set before us may be greatly encouraged. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain, where our forerunner Jesus has entered on our behalf. He has become a high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. Now, if you've been reading Hebrews, you'll have some understanding of that. It's not good. Another comment at the end. Hope is the anchor for the soul and allows us to enter a place never before open to commoners. We have a place where we can go now, in the hope that God is who he says he is. We can step in and say, I hold true to the promises of God, and I am not going to waver. I'm not going to grow lazy. I'm not ever going to be satisfied, because God did all of this for me. I want more, and I want more, and I'm going to keep running. And I'm going to remain diligent about the things that he has called me to, and I'm not going to project upon him my specifics for his promise, but I'm going to rest in the nature of his purpose. To know that that is what he has called me to, that is what he has called us to. To know that whatever the specifics are, that's God's job to work that out. If God promised Abraham he would be the father of many descendants, then he made that promise, and he saw it through. But like I said, I guarantee you, nowhere in Abraham's mind was one kid the answer. Nowhere. I guarantee in Abraham's mind, he stepped back and went, I should be having children any time. Right? And his wife also felt the same way. Sorry, Abe. Or we might have to take things into our hands. And therefore, cause the ruin. Cause the problem. But that's what hope is. And so I looked at this, and as I'm reading this, I'm thinking about this idea of this epistle coming in the mail, this letter coming in the mail to us here today. And I was thinking, I want you to understand something. I believe with my whole heart that God gave us a promise to take hold of here. How that purpose is, God works out the specifics. But I know for a fact that God gave this group of people a promise to take hold of and to remain diligent in and to remain active in. Now the interesting thing is that God's purpose doesn't waver. Ours can. Which is why the author of Hebrews uses Abraham as the example, because Abraham allowed his specifics, how he thought this promise would work out, he allowed that to infiltrate his life. And he became impatient. He became antsy. Now, by all accounts, he remained patient humanly, right? 25 years? Pretty solid wait. Right? If God tells you, you're going to be a father of many descendants, and you got to wait 25 years, that's pretty solid.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. Most of us at that point would be going, did you hear accurately? Because I don't think you did. And so what we have is we have this, I believe, like Abraham, we can grow impatient and begin to apply our specifics to the promises, thus giving ourselves the edification we need. Or we can step back and hold true and believe in the unchanging purpose of God. And I believe that God has laid on all of us a divine purpose here in Riverbend. Here in this location, here on this property. I believe that we are called to be here. And I will remain faithful and patient in that belief. Does it mean I won't waver? No, of course I will. Does it mean I will grow annoyed sometimes? No, of course I will. But it means that I refuse to let go of it, no matter what. Until God says, let go of it. I'm hanging on. But the reality is when we step back and we start to doubt the unchanging purpose of God, then we become insecure and passive and lazy. But the more we know, the more we passionately seek, the more we passionately read, the more we become, as He wants us to be, people of outreach, people of desire, people of change. People who say, I believe that God has called us here. I believe that we are here for a reason. How God defines that reason ultimately is not my decision. Be careful that we don't define success with how we see or perceive or assume success. But I guarantee, if you have a group of people who said, we believe that God has called us here, and He will be faithful to not forget our work, and we are not letting go until we have lived out God's unchanging purpose here, then you're going to be passionately working your tail off, right? So what does it say if you're not? Then you're doubting. Then you don't. And what's interesting about the author of Hebrews says that this is all because of two unchangeable things. I believe that God can't lie. Right? So if God can't lie, if God only tells the truth, then we have to believe that His never-changing nature of purpose is the same. That we have to believe and hold tight and hold true with faith and patience and hope that God has this purpose still for us.